At the family dinner, my daughter said, "The deed is signed. As of today, this house has a new owner." And she shouted to everyone, "My mother is now a guest here." The silence was immediate, brutal, as if someone had ripped the oxygen from the room. The guests froze, forks suspended in the air, glasses stopped halfway to their lips. No one moved. No one breathed. Chloe stood by the table, holding a white envelope high as if it were a trophy. Her eyes shone with something I had never seen in her before. Triumph, pure cruelty, calculated coldness. My own daughter had just declared me a guest in my own home. 65 years of life. 40 of them building this place with my own hands, with my sweat, with every dollar saved after paying the bills and feeding mouths that now stared at me in silence. And she was claiming it as hers. In front of everyone, the dining table was full. White china plates, crystal glasses reflecting the light of the chandelier, napkins folded with the care that only I knew how to give. Everything perfect, as it had always been in my house. In my house. Until this very moment. The guests looked at me. Some with pity, others with discomfort. Several looked away, as if witnessing my humiliation was too embarrassing even for them. But no one spoke. No one defended me. No one said a thing. Kevin, my son, was sitting next to Chloe, his gaze fixed on his plate, as if the mashed potatoes were suddenly the most fascinating thing in the world. Coward. That's what he was. A coward who didn't have the courage to look me in the eyes while his sister stripped me of everything I had built. Chloe placed the envelope on the table, right in front of me, as if it were the final sentence. "It's nothing personal, Mom," she said, with that voice that tried to sound sweet but only managed to be venomous. "It's just that at your age, maintaining a house like this is too much for you. I thought it would be better for everyone if I took over. You understand, right? Understand." That word echoed in my head. Understand what? That my own daughter had stolen from me? That she had forged my signature on legal documents? That she had waited for the most public, most humiliating moment possible to announce her victory? But I said nothing. Not yet. Because what Chloe didn't know, what none of them at that table knew, was that I already knew everything. I've known for months. Since that afternoon I found papers hidden in the drawer of my own dresser. Since I saw my forged signature on documents I never touched. Since I heard her talking on the phone in a low voice, believing I was asleep in my room. I said nothing then. I kept silent. I waited. I watched every move. And while they believed I was a naive old woman, easy to fool, I was building something they never saw coming. I stood up slowly from my chair. Very slowly. My hands weren't shaking. My eyes were dry. I folded my napkin carefully and left it next to my plate. I took my purse from the chair. I didn't say a word. Not a single one. I just looked at them. All of them. One by one. Chloe had that triumphant smile painted on her face. Kevin was still staring at his plate. The guests looked like statues, frozen in the discomfort of the moment. I walked toward the front door. My steps sounded firm on the hardwood floor. That floor I had chosen myself. That I paid for with money I earned cleaning other people's houses for years. That floor that now, according to a lying piece of paper, no longer belonged to me. No one stopped me. No one said anything. The silence followed me to the door. I left that room. I left that house. And I closed the door behind me. But as soon as I grabbed my purse and left, her smile disappeared when a call came through. I heard the phone ring inside. Once, twice. Then Chloe's voice, no longer so sure, no longer so triumphant. "Hello?" Her tone changed immediately. "What? No, that can't be. There has to be a mistake." I stopped on the other side of the door, not to listen, just to catch my breath, to feel the December cold on my face, to allow myself 1 second of weakness before continuing. Inside, Chloe's voice rose. It was no longer the confident voice from a moment ago. Now it sounded nervous, scared. "Please, tell me it's not real. There has to be an explanation." I smiled. Barely. A small smile that no one saw. Because what had just happened was exactly what I had planned. Every detail. Every second. Including that call. I walked to my car in the driveway. The driveway I had paid to have paved, the roses I had tended to for years. The stone path I had installed with my savings. All mine, legally mine. And soon everyone would know it. I sat in the car and closed the door. Only then, in the privacy of that space, did I allow my hands to tremble. Just a little, not from fear, from contained rage, from trampled dignity, but also from something else. Something I hadn't felt in years. Power. I took my phone out of my purse. I dialed the number I had saved for weeks. It rang twice. "Miss Morales," I said, my voice calm. "It's Eleanor Bishop. It just happened exactly as we planned. It's time to proceed with the next phase." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure, Mrs. Bishop? Once we take the next step, there's no turning back." "Completely sure," I replied. "I want my daughter to know what it feels like to lose everything. I want her to understand that underestimating a 65-year-old woman was the worst mistake of her life." I hung up. I put the phone away. And I allowed myself to take a deep breath. 40 years. 40 years working to buy that house. Every dollar earned cleaning other people's floors. Every extra hour that destroyed my back. Every sacrifice so my children could have a decent roof over their heads. And Chloe thought she could snatch it away with a forged paper and a cruel smile. But she made a mistake. A fatal mistake. She thought I was weak. She thought that because I was 65, because I had gray hair, because I walked slower, I didn't have the strength to defend myself. She thought she could steal my life, and I would stay quiet, obedient, grateful to be her guest. I started the car. I looked one last time toward the living room window. I could see shadows moving inside. Chloe was probably panicking. Kevin was probably still quiet, useless as always. It didn't matter. Soon everything would come crashing down on them. Because for months, while Chloe treated me like a burden, while she planned to steal my house, I was building the perfect case to destroy her. Photographs of forged documents, recordings of conversations, testimonies from experts confirming my signature had been forged. A private investigator who tracked every lie, every illegal move. Chloe wanted to play. Perfect. But she didn't know who she was messing with. Because a betrayed mother is not a weak woman. She is a silent force that waits for the exact moment to act. And that moment had just begun. I drove through the empty streets. The night was cold and dark. But inside me, something was burning. It wasn't just rage. It was determination. It was justice. It was the certainty that this story would not end with my humiliation. It would end with my victory. And Chloe would soon find that out. I drove through the empty streets, with no real destination. The city lights blurred past the window. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, as if letting go meant falling apart completely. But I wouldn't. Not now. Not after everything I had planned. The humiliation from a few minutes ago still burned in my chest. Chloe's voice echoed in my head over and over. "My mother is now a guest here." Those words. That coldness. As if I were an object she could dispose of at will. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been preparing for this exact moment for months. I stopped at a red light. I took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3 times. I closed my eyes for an instant and forced myself to remember, to go back to the moment it all began, to the moment I realized my own daughter was betraying me. It was 6 months ago, an afternoon in April. I had gone to the supermarket and came back earlier than expected because I forgot my shopping list. The house was quiet, or so I thought. I went upstairs toward my bedroom and heard voices coming from the study. The door was slightly ajar. I approached slowly. I don't know why. Something in the tone of those voices made me stop, made me listen. It was Chloe. She was on the phone. Her voice sounded excited, almost euphoric. "I'm telling you it's going to work," she was saying. "She doesn't suspect a thing. It's perfect. Too trusting. Too naive." I felt something freeze inside me. "I just need you to do what I asked," Chloe continued. "Forge the signature on the notary documents. Make it clean. No one is going to check those papers until it's too late." My heart skipped a beat. Forge my signature? What was she talking about? Once we have the deed in my name, She won't be able to do anything, Chloe said, laughing. And if she tries to fight it, we'll make her look like a senile old woman who doesn't know what she's saying. No one will believe her. At her age, it's easy to make her look like someone who's not in her right mind. The words hit me like fists, every single one of them. Senile old woman, not in her right mind. My own daughter was talking about me as if I were trash she needed to throw out. I backed away from that door silently. I went down the stairs carefully. I left the house without making a sound. I sat on the garden bench, the one my husband Arthur built before he died, and let reality sink in. My daughter was stealing from me, my own flesh and blood, the baby I nursed, the child I cared for when she had a fever for nights on end, the girl I taught to read, to write, to be a good person. That girl was now a woman planning to destroy me. I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since Arthur's death. But after the tears came something different. Something colder, more calculated. Rage. Not the rage that screams and breaks things. Not the rage that loses control, but the rage that thinks, that plans, that waits for the perfect moment to strike. I dried my tears. I stood up, and I made a decision. If Chloe wanted to play dirty, fine, but I would play smarter. That same afternoon I went to the bank. I made copies of all the documents related to the house, original deeds, proof of payments, everything that proved that property was mine and mine alone. I put it all in a safe deposit box in my name at another bank, a place Chloe would never think to look. Then I hired a private investigator. It cost me $500 just for the first consultation, money I took from my personal savings. I explained the situation. I gave him names, dates, everything I knew. Mrs. Bishop, the investigator said, a man in his 50s with a serious look. What you're telling me is a serious crime. Document forgery, fraud. If we can prove it, your daughter could go to prison. I want you to prove it, I replied, without hesitation. I want every detail, every move she makes, every person she communicates with, everything. He nodded. It will cost around $3,000 for the complete service. Are you willing to pay that? $3,000. It was almost everything I had left in my savings. Money I had kept for emergencies, for my old age. So I wouldn't be a burden to anyone. I'm willing, I said. And so it began. For the next few months, I lived a double life. On the outside, I was Eleanor Bishop, the kind mother, the loving grandmother, the elderly woman who baked cookies on Sundays and asked about her children's lives. On the inside, I was someone else, a strategist, a hunter waiting for the exact moment to trap her prey. The investigator brought me reports every week. Photographs of Chloe meeting a man in coffee shops, recordings of conversations where they planned every detail of the theft, documents showing how they had forged my signature on multiple occasions. Each report broke my heart a little more, but it also made me stronger. I discovered that Kevin was involved. My son, my baby, the shy boy who used to cry when I left him at school. Now he was his sister's accomplice. He didn't have the courage to lead the plan, but he also didn't have the courage to stop it. He just stayed quiet. And silence, I learned, is another form of betrayal. I also found out why they were doing it. Debts. Chloe had massive debts, maxed out credit cards, loans she couldn't pay. She had been living beyond her means for years, buying things she didn't need to impress people she didn't care about. And now she needed money desperately. My house was worth approximately $400,000. If she managed to get it in her name, she could sell it or mortgage it to pay off her debts. And I, her mother, would be the necessary sacrifice for her financial rescue. Pathetic. One day, the investigator arrived with something more, something that changed everything. Mrs. Bishop, he said, handing me an envelope, we found this. It's a copy of the document they filed with the notary. The signature is clearly fake. I hired a handwriting expert who can testify in court that this is not your signature. I opened the envelope. There it was. The fraudulent document. My supposed signature at the bottom. But it wasn't my signature. It was a crude imitation. Any expert could see it. We also have something else, the investigator continued. The notary who supposedly certified this document doesn't exist. The registration number is fake. They used the name of a notary who died 3 years ago. It's a complete fraud. I felt something ignite inside me. It wasn't just rage now. It was certainty. I had everything I needed to destroy them. "What should I do now?" I asked. "You need a lawyer," he replied. "A good one. I know someone. Her name is Margarita Morales. She's excellent in family fraud cases. If anyone can help you, it's her." I contacted Miss Morales that same week. She was a woman in her 40s with an intelligent gaze and a firm voice. I showed her everything. Every document, every photograph, every recording. She reviewed everything in silence for almost an hour. Then she looked me directly in the eyes. "Mrs. Bishop, you have a solid case. Very solid. But I need to ask you something important. Are you prepared for the consequences? Your daughter will go to prison. Your son could be considered an accomplice. This will destroy your family." "They destroyed my family first," I replied without hesitation. "I just want justice." Miss Morales nodded. "Then we'll get it for you." We worked out a plan. We would wait for Chloe to make her final move. We would let her believe she had won. And then, when she was at her most confident, most secure in her victory, we would take her down. "The element of surprise is crucial," Miss Morales explained. "If she suspects you know anything, she could destroy evidence or flee. We need her to feel invincible, to believe she's already won." So I waited. I acted. I pretended. I continued to be the kind mother. The grandmother who asked about her grandkids. The elderly woman who needed help opening jars. I became invisible, insignificant, exactly what they wanted me to be. And meanwhile, at night, in the privacy of my room, I reviewed every detail of the plan with Miss Morales. Every move, every possible scenario. Until tonight arrived. The Christmas dinner. The moment Chloe had chosen for her grand announcement. For her public humiliation. I knew it was coming. The investigator had warned me. Chloe wanted a stage. She wanted witnesses. She wanted everyone to see her take everything from me. And I gave it to her. I gave her exactly what she wanted. Now, sitting in my car, phone in hand after talking to Miss Morales, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. It wasn't the peace of resignation. It was the peace of someone who knows justice is near. The peace of someone who has done everything possible and now just has to wait. I started the car again. I wouldn't go back to that house tonight. I had a room reserved in a modest hotel on the other side of town, a place where I could think, where I could rest before what was to come. Because tomorrow, the real battle would begin. And this time, I would have all the weapons. The hotel room was small and simple. A single bed with white sheets, a worn wooden desk, a window overlooking a street lit by lampposts. Nothing fancy, nothing unnecessary. Just a space where I could breathe without feeling like the walls were crushing me. I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were still shaking slightly. Not from fear, from something deeper. From years of pent-up emotions that now threatened to overflow. I looked at my phone. 3 missed calls from Kevin. 2 messages from Chloe. I didn't open them. Not yet. First, I needed to remember. I needed to go back to the beginning. To understand how we got here, I closed my eyes and let my memory take me. It all began 40 years ago. I was 25. I had just married Arthur, a good man who worked in a furniture factory. We lived in a rented 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where the neighbors' shouts could be heard through the thin walls. Chloe was born a year later. Kevin 2 years after that. 2 beautiful children who filled my life with purpose, but also with worry. Because that apartment was too small, too noisy, too unstable to raise a family. I remember the night Arthur and I decided we needed our own house. We were sitting in the small kitchen, with the month's bills spread out on the table. He was smoking a cigarette. I was adding numbers in a notebook. "We can't keep living like this," I said. "The children need a yard, a place where they can play without bothering anyone." Arthur sighed. He stubbed out his cigarette in the ashtray. "A house costs money we don't have, Eleanor. We can barely make rent." "Then we'll get more money," I replied. "I'll find another job. 2 jobs if I have to. And that's exactly what I did. For the next 15 years, I worked tirelessly. In the mornings, I cleaned houses in wealthy neighborhoods where the women treated me as if I were invisible. In the afternoons, I worked at a laundromat. On weekends, I baked pies to sell. Every dollar I earned, after paying for rent and food and clothes for the children, I saved in an old tin can I hid under the sink. $5 here, $10 there. Sometimes just cents. But over time, those cents turned into bills. Arthur worked overtime at the factory. He would come home with his hands full of splinters and his face tired, but he never complained. He never said it wasn't worth it, because we both shared the same dream. A house. A place that was ours. Chloe and Kevin grew up without knowing the sacrifices we were making. They grew up with clean clothes and food on the table, with new school supplies every year, with small gifts at Christmas. They never lacked anything. They never knew that sometimes I skipped meals so they could eat. When Chloe was 10, she started making comments. Little comments that seemed innocent at the time. "My friend Sarah has a huge house," she'd say. "She has her own room with a private bathroom. Why don't we have something like that?" "Because it costs money," I would explain. "But we're saving. Someday we'll have our own house," she would huff. "All my friends have houses. Only we live in this horrible apartment." Her words hurt me, but they reminded me why I worked so hard. Why I broke my back cleaning other people's floors, so that one day my children wouldn't have to feel ashamed of their home. Kevin was different. Quieter. More compliant. He never complained about the apartment. He never asked for things we couldn't give him, but he also never asked about our sacrifices. He just lived in his own world, oblivious to it all. The years passed. The tin can under the sink filled up. We emptied it into a bank account. The account grew slowly, very slowly, but it grew. When Chloe was 15, she started to change. She became more demanding, more materialistic. She wanted designer clothes, expensive shoes, things she saw her friends wearing, things we couldn't afford. "Everyone at school has new phones," she'd say. "Why do I have to use this old one?" "Because the one you have works perfectly," Arthur would reply. "You don't need a new one just because others have it." Chloe would lock herself in her room, slamming the door. She would stop talking to us for days. She would punish us with her silence until we eventually gave in and bought her something. Not always what she asked for, but something. That's how she learned to manipulate us. With tantrums, with silence, with fake tears. And we, wanting to be good parents, wanting her to be happy, fell for it time and time again. Kevin watched it all in silence. He never asked for anything, but he also never stood up for anything. He was a passive spectator in his own family. When Chloe turned 18, we finally reached our goal. After 15 years of saving, of sacrifice, of grueling work, we had enough money for a down payment on a house. I remember the day we went to see it. It was a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small yard with enough space to plant flowers. Nothing fancy, but it was perfect. "This is the house?" Chloe asked, looking at it with disdain. "It's so small." "It's ours," I replied, feeling a pang in my chest. "And it's all we could get with our hard work." She sighed dramatically. "I was hoping for something better. But we bought the house anyway. It cost $200,000. We paid $50,000 as a down payment, money that had taken us 15 years to save. And we took out a mortgage for the rest. The day we moved in, I cried with happiness. We finally had a home, a place no one could take from us, or so I thought. The first few years in the house were good. Arthur and I worked to pay the mortgage. Chloe finished high school and started college. Kevin remained quiet and distant, but he seemed content. We planted flowers in the yard. We painted the walls. We filled every corner of that house with our love, with our history, with our sweat. Chloe brought her friends over occasionally. She always apologized for how small the house was. She always made comments about how her friends lived in better places. But she lived there, ate there, slept in a bed we provided for her. When Arthur died 5 years ago, the world stopped for me. A heart attack. Quick. Without warning. One day he was there, laughing in the kitchen. The next day he was in a casket, Chloe cried at the funeral. Kevin did too, but their tears dried up quickly. They went back to their lives within weeks. I was left alone in that house, surrounded by memories and silence. I paid off the rest of the mortgage with Arthur's life insurance. Finally, after 20 years, the house was completely mine. No debts, no pending payments. Mine. I thought that would give me peace, and it did, for a while. But then the changes in Chloe began. She visited the house more often. She asked questions about documents, about my will, about my future plans. "Mom, at your age, you should be thinking about these things," she'd say. "What would happen to the house if something happened to you?" "The house will be divided between you and Kevin when I die," I'd reply. "It's all in my will." But that didn't seem to be enough for her. She wanted more. She wanted control. She wanted the house now. Not when I died. Now. She started visiting more often, going through my things, making comments about how hard it must be for me to maintain the house alone. "Maybe you should consider selling it," she'd suggest. "You could move into a smaller apartment, easier to maintain." "I'm not selling my house," I'd answer firmly. "This house is all I have left of your father. Everything we built together." She would smile, but it was a cold smile. "Just think about it, Mom. It's for your own good. For my good." Those words always sounded like a threat disguised as concern. The comments became more frequent, more insistent. Chloe started bringing brochures for senior living facilities, for small apartments, for places where people like me could live with fewer responsibilities. "Look at this place, Mom," she'd say, showing me photographs. "They have nurses 24 hours a day. Recreational activities. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." "I don't need nurses," I'd reply. "I'm perfectly fine." But she insisted, over and over, until I stopped listening to her, until her visits became something I dreaded instead of enjoyed. And then I found the papers, the forged documents, and everything made sense. It wasn't concern motivating her visits. It was greed, pure and simple greed. I opened my eyes. The hotel room was still the same, small, quiet, safe. I looked at my phone again. 4 missed calls from Kevin now. 3 messages from Chloe. I opened them. The first message said, "Mom, we need to talk. Please answer." The second, "I don't know why you left like that. This is all for your own good." The third, "Call me right now." I deleted the messages without replying. I had nothing left to say to them. The words were over. Now, only actions remained. And tomorrow, those actions would begin. I woke up early. The gray light of dawn was filtering through the hotel window. I had slept little, maybe 3 or 4 hours. But it didn't matter. My mind was clear, clearer than it had been in months. I showered. I got dressed in simple clothes, black pants and a gray blouse. Nothing flashy, nothing that would attract attention. I pulled my hair back into a simple bun. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same one who had left that dinner a few hours ago. There was something different in her eyes, something harder, more determined. I grabbed my purse and left the hotel. The cold morning air hit my face. The streets were almost empty. Just a few early workers walking to their jobs. The city was still asleep. I drove to a small diner downtown. I ordered a black coffee and sat at a booth by the window. 10 minutes later, Miss Morales walked through the door. She was a woman with a strong presence. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Impeccable pantsuit. Leather briefcase in hand. She sat across from me without smiling. "Good morning, Mrs. Bishop," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Ready?" I replied. "Ready to do whatever is necessary." She nodded. She took a folder from her briefcase and placed it on the table. "Last night, after your call, we activated the protocol we had planned. I contacted Maria Sanchez, the public records official who had been investigating irregularities in notary documents. She reviewed your house's file overnight. She opened the folder. Inside were documents with official seals, photographs, technical analyses. What she found is conclusive," Ms. Morales continued. "The document your daughter filed with the public registry is completely fraudulent. The notary signature belongs to an official who died 3 years ago. The registration number is false. And your signature, Mrs. Bishop, was clearly forged. I felt something tighten in my chest. It wasn't surprise. I already knew. But seeing it confirmed officially with documents and technical analyses made it real in a different way. Maria is willing to testify, Miss Morales said. She has the legal authority to declare this document as fraud. That means the supposed transfer of ownership was never valid. The house is still yours. Legally. Completely yours. And Chloe? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. What will happen to her? Miss Morales looked me directly in the eyes. Forgery of official documents. Fraud. Attempted theft. These are serious felonies. She could face 5 to 10 years in prison. Maybe more, depending on how many charges the prosecutor files. 10 years. My daughter could spend 10 years in prison. The baby I nursed. The child I held when she had nightmares. The child who no longer existed. Because the woman who had humiliated me last night was not my daughter. She was a stranger who carried my last name. And Kevin? I asked. If we can prove he knew about the fraud and didn't report it, he could be prosecuted as an accomplice. But so far, we only have circumstantial evidence of his involvement. He might get off with a lesser penalty. Maybe community service. Maybe just a fine. Kevin, my cowardly son. The boy who never had the courage to do anything. Not for good, not for evil. He just let things happen around him. I need you to confirm something, Mrs. Bishop, Miss Morales said, closing the folder. Once we file these charges, there is no turning back. Your daughter will be arrested. Prosecuted. Her name will be in the papers. The entire family will be exposed. Are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this? I took a sip of my coffee. It was cold already. Bitter. Like everything I had lived through these past few months. Miss Morales, I said, putting the cup down on the table. My daughter humiliated me in front of people I've known for years. She called me a guest in the house I bought with 40 years of work. She treated me like I was trash she could discard when it suited her. And she did it with a smile, with pleasure. So yes, I am completely sure. She nodded slowly. Then we will proceed. We will file the charges with the district attorney's office today. The arrest warrant will be issued in 48 hours, maybe sooner. And when that happens, the authorities will go looking for her, probably at her house. At your house, Mrs. Bishop, my house, where Chloe was probably at this very moment, enjoying her false victory, rearranging furniture, making plans, feeling like the owner of something that never belonged to her. There's something else you need to know, Miss Morales continued. The private investigator you hired kept working last night. He discovered that Chloe had already started the process to mortgage the house. She was planning to take out a loan for $200,000, using the property as collateral. $200,000. Half the value of my house. Money she would use to pay her debts and continue living beyond her means. And when she couldn't pay that mortgage, the bank would take my house. My entire life. Fortunately, the lawyer added, the bank detected irregularities in the documents and halted the process. But if we hadn't acted now, she eventually would have found a way to destroy everything you built. I closed my eyes for a moment. I took a deep breath. When I opened them, the decision was made. Completely, without a doubt. Do it, I said. File the charges. Have her arrested. Let her face the consequences of what she did. Miss Morales put the documents back in her briefcase. There is one more thing. A strategy I suggest, if you agree. Instead of having the authorities go directly to arrest her, we could arrange a meeting. A controlled confrontation where you can be present. Where she has to face the truth in front of you. And in front of the authorities. Why would I do that? I asked. Because the psychological impact will be greater. Because she needs to see that you are not the helpless victim she believed you to be. That this whole time, while she was planning to destroy you, you were building your defense. That moment of realization, Mrs. Bishop, will be your true revenge. Revenge. That word sounded strong. Dark, but also necessary. When? I asked. 2 days from now. I will ask Chloe to come to my office under the pretext of reviewing some final documents related to the property. She will think it's part of her plan. that she's moving forward with her fraud, but when she arrives, the authorities will be waiting for her. And so will you. I nodded. Perfect. We said our goodbyes. Miss Morales left the diner with her briefcase. I stayed seated for a few more minutes, looking out the window. The streets were starting to fill with people. The city was waking up, and with it, my new life. I left the diner and walked aimlessly for a while. I needed to move my body. I needed to process everything I had just confirmed. In 2 days, it would all be over. In 2 days, the truth would come out. I passed by a flower shop. I stopped. Inside, colorful bouquets filled buckets of water. Roses, lilies, carnations. Flowers I had always loved. Flowers I used to plant in my garden. I went inside. The fresh scent enveloped me. I walked over to a bucket full of white roses. Beautiful, pure, innocent. Can I help you? A young woman asked from the counter. I want a bouquet of white roses, I said. The freshest you have. She prepared the bouquet carefully. She wrapped it in paper and handed it to me. I paid $20. They're for someone special, I said. More to myself than to her. How lovely, the young woman replied, smiling. I left the shop with the flowers in my hands. I got in my car. I drove to the cemetery where Arthur was buried. I hadn't been in months. Too busy surviving. Too busy planning. The cemetery was quiet. Only a few people were visiting distant graves. I walked along the stone paths until I reached Arthur's headstone. Simple. Gray. With his name and dates engraved, I knelt in front of it. I placed the roses on the grass. I touched the cold stone with my fingers. Hello, my love, I whispered. I'm sorry I haven't been by sooner. A lot has happened. Things we never imagined. The wind rustled the leaves of the nearby trees. It was the only sound. Chloe betrayed us, I continued. She tried to steal the house. Our house. The one we built together for so many years. But I'm not going to let her get away with it. I'm not going to let her destroy everything we achieved. I felt tears begin to form. But this time I didn't stop them. I let them fall freely. I miss you, I said. I miss you so much. I wish you were here. I wish you could tell me I'm doing the right thing. Because sometimes, Arthur, sometimes I don't know if this is justice or just revenge. And I don't know if there's a difference. I stayed there sitting for a long time, talking to a stone, talking to memories, talking to myself. When I finally stood up, I felt something different. Not peace, exactly, but clarity. Arthur had been a good man, a just man, and he would have wanted me to defend what was ours, what we built with love and sacrifice. I returned to the car. The day was still moving forward. I had 2 days before the confrontation. 2 days to prepare myself mentally. 2 days to make sure that when the time came, I would be ready. I drove back to the hotel. The room was still the same. Small, functional, temporary. I sat on the bed. I picked up my phone. This time, I did open Chloe's messages. She had sent 5 more during the morning. Mom, this is ridiculous. Answer me. I don't understand why you're acting like this. I'm just trying to help you. We need to resolve this like adults. If you don't answer, I'm coming to find you. I read each message with a cold calm. Then I wrote a reply. Just one. We'll see each other soon, Chloe. Very soon. I sent the message. I turned off the phone. And I lay back on the bed. In 2 days, everything would change. In 2 days, my daughter would learn that underestimating a 65-year-old woman was the biggest mistake of her life, and I would be there to see it. The 2 days passed slowly. Too slowly. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour like a whole day. But finally, the time came. It was Thursday morning, 9 o'clock. I was sitting in Miss Morales's office, in a conference room with glass walls and a long, dark wood table. My hands rested on my lap, still, firm. Miss Morales was standing by the window, speaking in a low voice with 2 plainclothes detectives. A man and a woman, both in professional attire. Discreet, professional. She'll be here any minute, the lawyer said, looking at her watch. I told her we needed to review some final documents to complete the property registration. She thinks it's just a routine formality. I felt something flutter in my stomach. It wasn't nervousness exactly. It was anticipation. Like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing you're about to jump. "Are you ready, Mrs. Bishop?" Miss Morales asked, walking over to me. "Yes," I replied. My voice sounded stronger than I expected. 10 minutes later, I heard the main office door open. Voices at the reception. Footsteps approaching down the hall. And then the conference room door opened. Chloe walked in with a confident smile. She was wearing a stylish dress and high heels. Her hair was perfectly styled. She looked like someone who had just won something important, like someone who was in control. But her smile vanished as soon as she saw me sitting there. "Mom?" she said, stopping in her tracks. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Steady, calm. "Miss Bishop, please take a seat," Miss Morales said, gesturing to a chair across from me. Chloe looked around. Her eyes landed on the two detectives standing against the wall. Her expression changed. The confidence began to crack. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice tense. "Miss Morales, you said we were just going to review some papers." "Sit down, please," the lawyer repeated. Chloe sat down slowly. Her hands were shaking slightly. She was trying to maintain her composure, but I could see the fear growing in her eyes. Miss Morales opened a folder on the table. She took out several documents and placed them in front of Chloe. "Miss Bishop, these are the documents you filed with the public registry 3 weeks ago, claiming ownership of the house located at 342 Magnolia Street." Chloe looked at the papers. She swallowed hard. "Yes, those are them." "What's the problem?" "The problem, miss," Morales continued, her voice firm, "is that these documents are fraudulent. The notary's signature belongs to a deceased official. The registration number is false. And your mother's signature was forged." The color drained from Chloe's face. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. That's not true," she finally said, her voice weak. "My mother signed those papers. She agreed to it. It was a mutual decision." "I never signed anything," I said. My voice cut through the air like glass. "And you know it perfectly well." Chloe looked at me. For a second, I saw something in her eyes. Regret? Fear? No. It was panic. Pure panic. "Mom, please," she started to say. "There must be a misunderstanding. I was just trying to help you. You said maintaining the house was difficult, that you needed help." "I never said that," I replied calmly. "What you said was that I was old, that I wasn't in my right mind, that no one would believe me if I tried to defend myself." Her eyes widened. She realized I knew everything, that I had known all along. You knew?" she whispered. "For 6 months," I replied. "Since the day I heard you planning it all on the phone, since I found the fake documents hidden in my own house. I knew every step you took, every lie you told, and I waited. I waited for the perfect moment for you to fall into your own trap." Chloe stood up abruptly. The chair fell backward with a loud crash. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "That house should be mine. I'm your daughter. I work hard. I have debts. I need that money." "And that's why you decided to steal from me," I said, still seated, still calm. "Because your debts, your bad decisions, your unnecessary spending were more important than respecting your own mother." "You don't understand anything," she screamed. "My whole life I've lived with the bare minimum, watching my friends have everything while I had nothing. That house is the only thing of value you have. And you're wasting it." "That house," I said, standing up slowly, "I bought with 40 years of work. Cleaning other people's floors, baking pies until the early morning, skipping meals so you could eat. And the only reason you think I'm wasting it is because it's not in your hands." Chloe opened her mouth to respond, but Miss Morales interrupted her. "Miss Bishop, I have here a forensic analysis of the signature on these documents. A certified handwriting expert confirms it does not belong to your mother. We also have testimony from bank employees confirming you attempted to mortgage the property using these false documents. And we have recordings where you discuss the fraud with an accomplice." Chloe froze. Her face went from red with anger to white with terror. This can't be happening, she muttered. Miss Morales signaled to the detectives. They stepped forward. Chloe Bishop, the male detective, said, "You are under arrest for the crimes of forgery of official documents, fraud, and attempted theft. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney." Chloe backed away, hitting the wall. "No," she screamed. "Mom, please. Tell them this is a mistake. Tell them it's not true." I walked toward her, slowly, until we were face to face. I looked her in the eyes, those eyes that were once my little girl's, that were now a stranger's. "Chloe," I said, my voice low but firm, "you had many chances to tell the truth, to do the right thing, to be the daughter I raised, but you chose this. You chose lies, theft, betrayal, and now you will face the consequences. Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face, "please don't do this. I'm your daughter. Your only daughter." "My daughter died the day she decided to steal from me," I replied. "The person I see now is a criminal, and criminals go to prison." The detectives took her by the arms. They put her in handcuffs. She was crying, screaming, begging, "Mom, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But I didn't say another word. I just watched as they led her away. Her cries faded as they took her down the hall. And then, silence. I stood there in that conference room, alone with Miss Morales. My legs were shaking, my hands too. Not from fear, from release. "Are you all right, Mrs. Bishop?" the lawyer asked. "Yes," I replied. "I'm all right." And it was the truth. For the first time in 6 months, I was all right. I left Miss Morales's office with my legs still shaking. The midday sun beat down hard on the sidewalk. The city continued its normal rhythm. Cars passed by. People hurried to their jobs. No one knew what had just happened in that building. No one knew I had just sent my own daughter to jail. I sat on a bench across from the office. I needed a moment. Just a moment to process it all. To understand that what I had been planning for months had finally come to pass. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Kevin. He had finally decided to show signs of life. "Mom, I just heard what happened with Chloe. We need to talk urgently. This is a terrible misunderstanding. Please, you have to drop the charges. She's your daughter. We're your family." I read the message twice. Then I deleted it without replying. Kevin didn't deserve a response. Not after staying silent while his sister planned to destroy me. Not after being an accomplice with his silence. I stood up and walked to my car. But before I got in, I made a decision. I wasn't going back to the hotel. It was time to go back to my house. My real house. The drive was strange. I knew every street, every corner. I had lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. But now, everything felt different. As if I were seeing the world with new eyes. When I reached Magnolia Street, my heart began to beat faster. There it was, my house, with its cream-colored walls, with the garden I had planted myself, with the windows Arthur installed with his own hands. I parked the car at the curb. Before getting out, I sat for a few minutes looking at the facade. This house held so many memories. The day we moved in, Christmases with the children running through the living room, Sunday afternoons in the yard, the last years with Arthur, planning our retirement together. And it also held the painful memories. Arthur's funeral, Chloe's increasingly cold visits, the moment I found the forged documents, the dinner where she humiliated me in front of everyone. I got out of the car. I took my keys from my purse. When I got to the door, I noticed the lock had been changed. Of course, Chloe had changed the locks, trying to secure her false ownership. But I had brought the original keys that I kept in the bank's safe deposit box, and I had the legal document proving I was the rightful owner. I had every right in the world to go in. I opened the door carefully. I stepped inside. The silence greeted me. A different silence than the one I had left 2 days ago. This silence was mine again. I walked through the living room. Everything was the same and different at the same time. Chloe had moved some of the furniture. She had taken photographs off the walls. Family photographs. Photographs of Arthur. As if she wanted to erase our history to write her own. I walked over to an empty shelf where our wedding photo used to be. Arthur and I, young, smiling, full of hope. That photo had been there for 20 years, and now it was gone. I went upstairs to my bedroom. The door was closed. I opened it, and what I saw took my breath away. Chloe had emptied my room. My bed was gone. My dresser, too. My personal belongings had been packed into boxes that were piled in a corner, as if I were a tenant being evicted, as if my entire life could be stored in cardboard boxes. I sat on the floor, directly on the bare wood, and for the first time since this all began, I cried without holding back, not from sadness, not from pain, but from rage. Rage for everything they had done to me. Rage for being treated like trash in my own home. But I also cried from relief. Because this was over. Because I had gotten back what was mine. Because I no longer had to pretend to be weak. I heard a car park outside. Footsteps approaching the door. Someone rang the doorbell. I dried my tears. I went downstairs. I opened the door. It was Eileen, my friend, the only person who had supported me from the beginning. She was holding a grocery bag in her hands and had a look of concern on her face. "Eleanor, my dear, I just heard everything. I came as soon as I knew you were back at the house. Are you okay? Do you need anything?" I hugged her, tightly, like I hadn't hugged anyone in a long time. "I'm okay, Eileen. I'm okay now." She came inside. She left the bag on the kitchen table. She started taking things out. "Bread, milk, coffee, fruit. I brought you some basics so you can stay here tonight. I figured you wouldn't have any food in the house after everything that's happened. Thank you, my friend. You don't know how much this means to me." Eileen made coffee. We sat in the kitchen. The same kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals for my family. The same kitchen where Arthur and I planned our future. The same kitchen Chloe wanted to snatch from me. "Tell me everything, Eleanor. What happened exactly? The rumors are already flying around the neighborhood, but I want to hear it from you." I told her everything. From the moment I discovered the fraud to the arrest this morning. Eileen listened to me in silence, nodding occasionally, squeezing my hand when the words became difficult to say. "You did the right thing, Eleanor. I know it hurts. I know she's your daughter. But she betrayed you in the worst way possible. And you couldn't let her get away with it. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh. If I should have given her a chance to explain. To repent. She had 6 months to repent. 6 months where she could have stopped all of this. But she didn't. She went ahead with her plan. She humiliated you publicly. That wasn't a mistake, Eleanor. It was a conscious decision to hurt you. She was right. Eileen was always right. And now what? I asked. What do I do with all of this? How do I rebuild my life after my own family betrayed me? Eileen took my hands in hers. Now you live, Eleanor. You live in your house, in your space, without fear, without guilt, and you rebuild everything your own way, without toxic people who only want to take advantage of you. Kevin wrote to me. He wants me to drop the charges against Chloe. He says I'm the one destroying the family, Eileen snorted. Of course he says that. It's easier to blame you than to admit he's also responsible for staying quiet. Don't answer him, Eleanor. He doesn't deserve your time or your energy. We stayed in the kitchen until it got dark, talking, remembering, planning the future. When Eileen finally left, she promised to come back tomorrow to help me reorganize the house. I was alone again. But this time, the loneliness didn't feel heavy. It felt liberating. I went back up to my empty room. I looked at the boxes where Chloe had stored my things as if they were trash. I opened one. Inside were my photographs, my memories, my life packed away without care. I took out my wedding photo with Arthur. I wiped it clean. I took it to the living room and placed it back in its spot, where it always should have been. It's over, my love, I said to the photograph. It's all over. Our house is safe. Our history is safe. I sat on the sofa, my sofa, in my living room, in my house, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt at peace. Tomorrow would come, the legal proceedings, the consequences, the difficult conversations. But tonight, I just wanted to be here, in the place I built with my sweat, in the home that no one would ever take from me again, I closed my eyes. And finally, after so long, I slept soundly. I woke up to sunlight, streaming through the living room window. I had fallen asleep on the sofa, fully clothed. My body protested the uncomfortable position, but my mind was clearer than ever. It was Friday. One day after Chloe's arrest, I got up and made coffee. The aroma filled the empty house and reminded me of the quiet mornings I used to enjoy before all this began. Before I discovered my own daughter was planning to destroy me. As I was drinking my coffee, my phone began to ring. It was Miss Morales. "Good morning, Mrs. Bishop. I hope I didn't wake you. I need to inform you about some important developments that occurred overnight. Do you have a moment to talk?" "Yes, Miss Morales. Go ahead." Chloe spent the night in the detention center. This morning she had her first preliminary hearing. The judge set bail at $50,000. It's a considerable amount, but given that the charges include fraud and document forgery, the judge considered her a flight risk. There's also news about her accomplice. I sat down at the kitchen table. My heart was beating fast. The private investigator finally identified the person who helped Chloe with the document forgery. His name is Nathan Carter, 32 years old. He worked as an administrative assistant at a different notary office, not the one that supposedly certified the documents. He used his access to official seals and stationery to create the fake documents. He was also arrested last night. During his interrogation, he confessed everything. He admitted that Chloe paid him $5,000 for his services and that she provided him with examples of your signature so he could forge it. $5,000. My daughter had paid $5,000 to steal a house worth $400,000, and she probably thought it was a smart investment. There's something else, Mrs. Bishop. Kevin showed up at the police station this morning. He wanted to talk to the investigators. At first, he denied any involvement in the fraud, but when they showed him evidence of text messages between him and Chloe discussing the plan, his story changed. He admitted he knew what his sister was doing. He said he tried to dissuade her at first, but eventually decided not to interfere because he thought you genuinely needed help managing the property. He's trying to present himself as someone who simply failed to act, not as an active participant. But the prosecutor is considering charges of passive complicity. Kevin, my cowardly son, even now, he was trying to save himself with pathetic excuses, saying he thought it was for my own good, as if stealing from me was an act of kindness. What does that mean for him, Miss Morales? Will he go to prison too? It's hard to say for sure. If the prosecutor decides to press charges, he will likely face lesser charges than Chloe, perhaps obstruction of justice or accessory after the fact. He might receive probation, community service, or a short prison sentence. A lot will depend on how cooperative he is during the investigation and whether he testifies against Chloe. The prosecution might offer him a deal if he's willing to testify against her. The thought of Kevin testifying against his own sister turned my stomach. But then I remembered they had both been willing to betray me without a second thought. Family loyalty clearly meant nothing to them when money was involved. I also need to inform you about something we discovered yesterday afternoon. Maria Sanchez, the official at the public registry, found that Chloe had attempted this same type of fraud before. 3 years ago, she tried to forge a will from her paternal grandmother, your late husband Arthur's mother. At that time, other family members detected the irregularities and threatened to press charges, but they ultimately decided to handle it within the family to avoid a scandal. Chloe received a warning and promised not to try anything like it again. Obviously, she didn't keep that promise. My blood ran cold. Arthur's mother, her own grandmother. Chloe had tried to steal from her too. And I never knew. Arthur never told me, probably to protect me, to stop me from seeing our daughter for what she really was. This information is important because it establishes a pattern of behavior. It shows this wasn't an isolated mistake or a moment of desperation. Chloe has a history of trying to defraud members of her own family. The prosecutor can use this to argue for a more severe sentence. We could be talking about 8 to 10 years in prison instead of 5, 10 years. An entire decade. Chloe would be 45 when she got out. Her whole life would change. Her career, her relationships, her future, all destroyed by her own greed. Mrs. Bishop, are you still there? Yes, Miss Morales, I'm still here. I'm just processing all this information. It's a lot. I understand completely. I also want you to know that in the coming days, you will likely receive calls from other people. Relatives, Chloe's friends, maybe even reporters if the story hits the local news. Some will try to convince you to drop the charges. They will tell you you're being cruel, that you're destroying your family. You need to prepare yourself mentally for those conversations. And remember why you made this decision. I'm not dropping the charges, Miss Morales. It doesn't matter who calls me or what they say. Chloe had months to do the right thing. She chose not to. Now she will face the consequences of her actions. I'm glad to hear that determination in your voice. Many mothers in your situation eventually give in to family pressure and drop the charges. But that only perpetuates the cycle of abuse. Your daughter needs to learn that actions have consequences, even when they're committed against one's own family. We ended the call. I sat in the kitchen for a long time, staring at my now cold cup of coffee, thinking about everything Miss Morales had told me. Thinking about Chloe's grandmother, who had probably suffered the same betrayal I had but had chosen silence. I was not going to make that mistake. I was not going to protect Chloe from the consequences of her actions just because we shared blood. She had made her choice. Now, I was making mine. The doorbell rang. I looked out the window. It was Eileen, just as she had promised. I opened the door, and she came in carrying grocery bags. Good morning, dear. I brought you more provisions, and also some things to help you reorganize the house. You can't keep living surrounded by boxes as if you're a refugee in your own home. We spent the day together, reorganizing my bedroom. Eileen had brought new sheets, fresh towels, and small decorations to make the space feel cozy again. As we worked, I told her about the call from Miss Priani. IBA. Morales, about Chloe's history, about Kevin trying to save himself. That girl was always trouble, Eleanor. I remember when she was a teenager, how she would manipulate situations to get what she wanted. You and Arthur were always too lenient with her. You thought you were being good parents by giving her everything. But what she really needed were boundaries, consequences. And now she's finally getting them, even if it's 20 years too late. She was right. We had always been soft on Chloe, giving in to her tantrums, buying her love with gifts we couldn't afford, believing that if we gave her enough, she would eventually learn to value what she had, but she only learned to want more. By evening, my bedroom finally looked like a home again. The bed was made with clean sheets. My photographs were back in their places. My belongings were organized with care. It no longer looked like a space someone was evicting me from. It was mine again. Eileen left when it got dark, promising to come back soon. I was alone in my quiet house. But it was a different silence now. It wasn't the heavy silence of betrayal. It was the calm silence of a new beginning. I made myself a simple dinner, soup and toast. I ate at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the garden that needed attention. Tomorrow, I would start working on it, pulling the weeds, pruning the overgrown plants, bringing life back to this space. Just as I was bringing life back to myself, 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of legal silence as Chloe's case moved through the court system. 3 weeks in which I received exactly the calls Miss Morales had predicted. Distant cousins who never visited called to tell me I was being too harsh. Chloe's friends showed up at my door, begging me to drop the charges. I even received a letter from the mother of Chloe's accomplice, that Nathan Carter, pleading with me to have compassion. To all of them, I gave the same answer. I was not dropping anything. The charges would stand. Justice would run its course. Kevin tried to visit me twice. The first time, I didn't open the door. The second time, he called the police, claiming he was worried about my well-being. The officers arrived, verified that I was perfectly fine, and warned him not to come back without my permission. He didn't come back. Miss Morales kept me informed of every development. The prosecutor had decided to charge Kevin as an accomplice. He would face lesser charges, but he would have a criminal record. His lawyer was trying to negotiate a deal where he would testify against Chloe in exchange for a reduced sentence. Chloe's trial date was set for a Tuesday in April. I was informed I would likely have to testify. I would have to sit on that stand and tell my story in front of a judge, a jury, and my daughter. The thought terrified me, but it also gave me a strange sense of closure. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, looking at the photographs on the walls. Arthur and I at our wedding. The children when they were little. Happy Christmases, smiling birthdays. A whole life captured in frames that now felt like evidence of a world that no longer existed. At 6 in the morning, I got up. I showered. I put on a simple gray dress. I pulled my hair back. I looked in the mirror and practiced keeping my expression calm. I couldn't show weakness. I couldn't cry. I had to be strong one last time. Eileen arrived at 8 to accompany me to the courthouse. Miss Morales was waiting for us on the front steps. She was wearing her usual pantsuit and carrying a folder full of documents. "Good morning, Mrs. Bishop. Are you ready for this? I know it won't be easy, but remember that you have the entire truth on your side. Just tell them what happened, exactly as it happened. Be honest, be direct. The prosecutor will ask questions, and then Chloe's defense attorney will try to discredit your testimony. Stand firm. Don't let them confuse you or make you doubt what you lived through." We entered the building. We went through the metal detectors. We went up to the 3rd floor where the trial would be held. The courtroom was starting to fill up. I recognized a few faces. Distant relatives, curious neighbors, some people I didn't know, who were probably Chloe's friends. I sat in the front row next to Eileen. Miss Morales sat with the prosecutor's team. And then the side doors opened and they brought Chloe in. I hadn't seen her since the day of her arrest. I almost didn't recognize her. She had lost weight. Her face looked gaunt. The hair she always kept perfectly styled now hung lifelessly around her shoulders. She was wearing a simple suit that her lawyer had probably loaned her. She no longer looked like the confident, cruel woman who had humiliated me at that dinner. She looked small, broken. Our eyes met for a second. I saw something in her gaze. Remorse? A plea? I wasn't sure. And honestly, it didn't matter anymore. The judge entered. We all stood. The trial began. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. He showed the forged documents. He called the handwriting expert, who explained how the signature had been faked. He presented recordings of conversations between Chloe and Nathan Carter, planning the fraud. Each piece of evidence was more damning than the last. Then, I was called to the stand. I walked forward, my legs shaking. I put my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. I sat in the chair and looked at the prosecutor. "Mrs. Bishop, please tell the jury how you discovered your daughter was planning to steal your house." I took a deep breath, and I began to tell my story. I told them about the afternoon I overheard the phone conversation, about finding the hidden documents, about the 6 months I spent gathering evidence while pretending I knew nothing, about the dinner where Chloe publicly humiliated me, about every moment of betrayal and pain. As I spoke, I looked at the jury, 12 strangers who held my daughter's future in their hands. I saw compassion in some faces, disgust in others. They were all listening to me intently. Chloe's lawyer tried to discredit me during the cross-examination. He suggested I was confused, that maybe I had signed the documents and forgotten, that at my age it was common to have memory problems. He insinuated this was revenge because Chloe had suggested I needed help with the house. But I stayed calm. I answered every question clearly. I pointed out that I had passed a full medical exam proving my mind was perfectly lucid. I recalled every detail of the events with precision. I didn't let him make me doubt myself. After my testimony came Nathan Carter's, who had agreed to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. He confirmed that Chloe had paid him $5,000 to forge the documents, that she had given him specific instructions on how to do it, that she knew exactly what she was doing, and that it was completely illegal. Then Kevin testified. He looked miserable on the stand. He admitted he knew what his sister was doing, that he had tried to dissuade her, but not very hard, that he had eventually decided it might be better for me not to have the responsibility of the house. His testimony was weak and unconvincing. Even I could see the jury didn't believe him. The trial lasted 3 days. 3 days of testimony, of evidence, of arguments, and finally, the time came for the verdict. The jury retired to deliberate. We waited for 2 hours, 2 eternal hours in which I could do nothing but pray that justice would prevail. When the jury returned, the foreman stood up. In the case of the state versus Chloe Bishop, on the charge of forgery of official documents, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of attempted theft, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Chloe collapsed in her chair. Her lawyer held her up. Some of her friends in the audience were crying, but I just felt relief, a deep relief that washed over my entire body. Justice had prevailed. The truth had won, and I could finally close this chapter. The sentencing came 2 weeks after the verdict. The judge sentenced Chloe to 8 years in prison, no probation, no reduced sentence. 8 full years for betraying her own mother. Kevin received 2 years of probation and 300 hours of community service. His name was now on a criminal record. His reputation was destroyed. Neither of them contacted me again after the sentencing. It's been 6 months since then. 6 months in which I have learned to live again, to breathe without the weight of betrayal crushing my chest, to walk through my house without feeling like someone is going to snatch it from me. The garden is blooming again. I planted new roses where the old ones had withered. I put a new bench next to the tree Arthur planted years ago. In the afternoons, I sit there with a cup of tea and watch the sun set behind the hills. Eileen visits me often. Sometimes we cook together. Other times we just sit in silence, enjoying the company without needing words. She was my only ally when everyone else failed me. I will never forget that. Miss Morales became more than just my lawyer. She became a friend. She calls me every few weeks to see how I am. She invited me to join a support group for older women who have been victims of family financial abuse. I was hesitant at first, but I finally went. Hearing the stories of other women who went through similar situations made me feel less alone, less ashamed. I realized this happens to more people than we imagine, and that talking about it is the first step to healing. Some neighbors stopped speaking to me. They say I was too cruel to my own daughter, that a real mother would have forgiven. But there are others who support me, who understand that what I did wasn't revenge, but justice, who recognize the courage it takes to defend what is yours, even when the person taking it shares your blood. I received a letter from Chloe 2 months ago, the first communication since the trial. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were 3 pages, handwritten, words about regret, about how she finally understood what she had done, about how time in prison had given her perspective. It ended by asking if I could ever forgive her. I read the letter twice, then I put it in a drawer. I didn't answer it. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday I can find it in my heart to forgive. But that day isn't today, and maybe it never will be. And that's okay. Forgiveness isn't mandatory, especially when the wound is this deep. This house is no longer just a building to me. It's a symbol. A reminder that I am stronger than anyone thought, that I can survive the worst betrayal and come out on the other side with my head held high. That age is not weakness. Experience is not fragility. And gray hair doesn't mean I can be walked all over without consequences. I stand in front of the mirror some mornings and see a different woman than the one I was a year ago. The wrinkles are the same. The silver hair is still there. But there's something new in my eyes. A hardness that didn't exist before. A certainty of my own worth that no one can take from me. This house isn't just mine. It's what's left of the woman I was and the beginning of the woman I have become. It's the sanctuary I built with sweat and tears. It's the legacy I protected when everyone thought I was too weak to fight. It's the proof that a 65-year-old woman can be underestimated, but never defeated. Every morning, I wake up in my bed, in my room, in my house. And that is enough. More than enough. It's everything I need. The family I had is broken. But in its place, I found something more valuable. I found myself. I found my strength. I found my voice. And I discovered that sometimes, to save what matters most, you have to be willing to lose everything. It was worth it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. It was worth it because now I am free. Free from guilt. Free from manipulation. Free to live my life according to my own terms, not the expectations of others. This house is mine. This life is mine. And no one, ever again, will take from me what is mine.